So good morning again. Thanks for joining us. Good afternoon to those of you who are gathering with us from Kentucky and other Eastern time zones. We are super excited to have Carrie Higgins and Emily Carpenter with us today. They're going to be talking about vaping and nicotine addiction and how it's affecting our young people. So we're going to turn the conference over to them here in just a moment. In the meantime, I wanted just to go over some standard housekeeping, although we've been Zooming for a long time, so we all kind of know it by now. But if you can keep yourself muted so that we're not interrupting our speakers, that would be great. We also recognize many of us are still working from home. So if the doorbell rings or the dog barks, that is an interruption for you, but not for all of us. And we understand that at times children or pets need our attention. So come and go as you need to. We're going to have about 45 to 50 minutes of some really great presentation this morning. Then we'll do our normal lunchroom breakout sessions. Then we'll come back and do some Q&A. If you have any questions as we're going through, our presenters would like for you to go ahead and put your questions in the chat box. They're going to be monitoring each other's time, and they'll make sure that all of your questions are answered as we go throughout the day. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Emily Carpenter. Emily, I'll allow you to introduce yourself, tell the folks who you are, what you do, and when you're finished with yours, if you could introduce Carrie and hand the baton over, that would be great.
Will do. Thank you so much. Let me share my screen here real fast. Can everybody see my screen? Yeah, okay. So hi, I'm Emily Carpenter. I am the youth facilitator and outreach specialist for the Tobacco Education and Prevention Coalition for Porter County. Here's a much nicer photo of me. My hair is not cooperating today like Donna's. And here's my email. So if you want to jot that down, I'll put it up at the end and we'll send it out too, just so you guys have it. But I've recently graduated with my MPA this year, and I started this position in July. And I'm showing you my notes on purpose. I will tell you why in a minute. So voice is a lot of what I do in this position. Voice is Indiana's statewide youth empowerment brand. So our initiative is to engage, educate, and empower teens to celebrate a tobacco-free lifestyle. So we want to make sure that they know that they can live tobacco-free and that it's a cool thing to do, and then they have a choice to do so. This is what I show the teens when I do my pitch for recruitment. I want to let them know that they have the power to create a world that they want to live in. And they deserve to live in that world and to thrive in that world that they want. And we as adults, as adult allies, as adults in the community, are responsible for helping young people do that, empowering them, making sure their voices are heard, listening to them, making sure we have their ideas, and implementing them. So together we can fight injustices, ensure health equity, and everything like that. So that's really what I focus on for TPC. The breakdown for voice is that it provides service learning opportunities, self-improvement opportunities, leadership training. The teens can do things that create lasting positive community contributions to the community, and they learn about things that they might not learn about otherwise, about health equity, how what they're experiencing affects other people, and how they can positively impact marginalized populations. So today, what I'm going to talk to you about for us is the Sweet Deception curriculum and what that is for voice and how that applies to you guys. So it is a peer-to-peer, peer-led for youth health education program. These programs are really, really important because they make, for youth, they are more credible from youth, right? They care a whole lot more about what their peers say to them than what we say to them, even if it's the same words. They're more acceptable, they engage the youth, and the youth are just more open to sharing with each other than they are with adults. It's just how it is. As cool as we want to be, that's not necessarily what happens all the time, is that they're like ready to share with us. The presenters themselves, so they also gain communication skills from presenting. They increase their knowledge on the topic. Us specifically is the deception from big tobacco. They increase their confidence, their self-esteem. And if anybody here knows, I'm sure a lot of you guys have experience in this in your lives because you work in the public sector, talking in front of people is this huge thing. You're very nervous when you start, especially if you're young, and you want to hone those skills as you get older because they just help you overall in your life, right? You just do better, communicate better. You're able to have better opportunities because you can talk in front of people. So we want to give the youth in our community the ability to learn those skills while teaching the other youth in our community about tobacco education. So Sweet Deception itself, what we provide as TPC, as me, the youth facilitator, we do the training with them. We go through the curriculum, and I'm going to go through all of that with you so you see what they see. We go through a speaker handbook. So, and I think you can still see this if I pop this up. Here's a speaker handbook. So it goes through all of the slides, all of the speaker notes. It gives them the ability to prepare themselves, tells them what they need to do to be better at presenting. It gives them a guideline or a checklist for the day so that they can do that. Now, of course, I'm there helping them and going through all of this with them, but this is really for them so that they can feel like they're in charge of doing what they're doing, because they are. They're the ones that are in charge of conveying this message to people. It also includes the passion pitch form, which I will review too in a minute. That is the 60 to 90 seconds on why they are connecting, why they want to connect to their audience, why they're in it personally. So kind of if somebody walked up to you and asked you in your job, hey, why do you do your job? It's the 60 to 90 seconds that you would grab them in and say, I do this job because of this reason, right? I do my job. I love doing this job because I enjoy working with teens and I enjoy working with youth and impacting them the same way that I was impacted positively. I did voice as a teen, so I like doing this now. And I had a father who smoked and then died of lung cancer. So in a short, sweet, to the point kind of thing like I just did, that's what we teach the teens to do so they can connect to their audience. We also want to make sure that when they're reviewing this handbook that they know that there are things that they're required to say, but they're not required to say it in a particular way. So they take this and they make it their own. They put their personality in it. They put their style, they put their tone. You know, youth talk a certain way. Maybe they use lingo that we don't necessarily use, but they put that in there while staying true to the research and the facts. We give them resources. So at the end of that handbook I showed you, there's a bunch of resources for them so they can research more on their own, maybe incorporate other facts. And then at the end, we talk to them and debrief with them. So whether we're doing a training to train them how to do this, or after they have trained other youth, or they presented to, say, a school, we debrief with them. How did they feel? How can we do better? How can they do better? What can we do to just make this an overall better experience for everyone? When the youth train the youth, after we train them, they provide basically what we do for them. They do 90 to 120 minutes of the actual curriculum, the Sweet Deception content, welcome with the group, expectations, goal settings, a check-in and check-out, the content itself, and questions. They also can integrate icebreakers or other activities they can do so that they're engaging their audience, whether it's the youth-to-youth training part or to their audience in front of a school, in front of younger people that they're presenting to. It's kind of just like extra practice, I think, for them. So here is the actual curriculum. So Sweet Deception. This is the actual slide, the very first slide that the audience will see, right? What we do is we ask the students, as I said before, to create a passion pitch, and then we'll throw their picture. This is just a sample. These are not our teens, although we do have 3 teens involved right now. This is not one of them, but they will talk about their passion pitch. They'll have their photo up. They'll be in front of the audience speaking, kind of like I'm speaking to you, giving my passion pitch, just talking to them. It may be 1, it may be 2. It depends on who's presenting, but they'll all go through, and depending on how many students there are, present in shorter increments why they're there and what they're doing, but they'll all introduce themselves. And then they go right into what are e-cigarettes? So it's a question for the audience. So if we do it virtually, let's say, like we're doing this here, I would say, raise your hand if you have seen and known something about e-cigarettes. So if you guys are wanting or willing to interact with me right now, feel free to just pop that reaction up. We can do this presentation virtually, like I said, or in person, so it works both ways. And we give the audience a second, the youth will give the audience a second to respond. Thank you, Donna. And show this picture to them and talk a little bit about what e-cigarettes are, what Juuls are, which is a brand of, sorry, I have a needy golden retriever. What Juuls are, and that's a specific brand of e-cigarette, in case you do not know that. I'm guessing you guys have heard of Juuls or Juuling before. They're the ones that really went viral, I would say, when all of the e-cigarette things started coming into existence. So integrated into these slides are videos. So the videos have been put here, and this whole curriculum has been put together by the state. So these are here for a very specific reason. Everything in this presentation too for a specific reason. We do not normally edit this. We do not normally add or take things away from it. If we can help it, they're all there for a reason. Last time I tried to play this video, I'm not sure if it played. So I'm gonna play just a second of it if it will work, because last time it didn't work for me. Tell me if you can hear this.
This is an ad for one of today's hottest products.
Okay.
If you don't look carefully, though, you might miss what it's advertising. It's this little thing, and it's called Juul.
Juul looks more like a flash drive or computer device, but it is really another kind of e-cigarette.
Since it launched in 2015, Juul has taken over about 70% of the e-cigarette retail market share. It's now worth about $16 billion, and that success is often attributed to its sleek design. But the same features that make Juul a well-engineered product also make it attractive to young people.
So that's just a clip. This clip in particular is about 5 minutes long. So I'm not going to play the whole thing for you, but this kind of goes into what Juul is and how it went viral on the internet. And then it goes into, and the teens will just say these quotes out loud. And, Juul really hit the market in the right way at the right time, and they did it, unfortunately, very well. With nicotine and technology, especially in this day and age where their youth are very focused on technology, they really got into the hands of youth very quickly. So we go into what are disposables. So Juul is one that made everything popular, but there are plenty of other brands. So they're listed here, a lot of them. Mr. Fogg, I think, is like the one that's really, really big right now, Puff Bar. And they are the same, but they're cheap and they're easy for teens. They use them, throw them away. So, and then we go into flavors. So this photo is from a gas station, I think around here. Somewhere, I know it's in Indiana, and you can see that they are very colorful and very flavorful, and they're appealing directly to teens because of those things. I know they get my attention too, right? Marketing is marketing. If you know anything about marketing, those are going to be things that catch people's eyes, right? So the entire curriculum for Sweet Deception focuses on debunking these myths, these 3 myths, right? That e-cigarettes are safe, they don't have nicotine, that they aren't marketed to kids. These are all wrong. These are all horrible things that a lot of people believe, but that's exactly what this curriculum focuses on, each one specifically, one at a time, to go through and prove that those are myths. So here's another video I think is very funny. I'm going to play this one for you. It's from the Truth Initiative.
Vaping is like safer than vaping is safer than
So I like that clip because I think a lot of people, especially teens, think that because it's safer than cigarettes, something that they should or can be doing without repercussion, which is not true. And if you talk to any teens, even the teens in our voice program, they will tell you that they feel like their choices are smoking or vaping. And the truth is that the other option is to just not do it at all. And the other option, if you've started, is to quit. So I think this gets this across in saying that if somebody around you is saying, well, you know, vaping is safer than, it's not really. Just stop them right there in their tracks. It's not really anything else. It's in some ways worse. So we'll go into some of these news articles. So the teens will talk about them, you know, counterfeit vaping pods and Juul cigarettes being an issue in certain places, and how, you know, puff bars and the FDA have things going on. So these kind of brief over at some of the things that are going on in the news in terms of brand and the products themselves. And then the next part are sad stories about people, teens that have been vaping, and bad things have happened to them because of it. So, and these are not one-off things. These are happening a lot around everywhere when people are vaping, and some people might say, well, you know, I vape and everything's fine. Well, that's not really what happens to a lot of people. They have issues with their lungs collapsing. They have issues breathing. I've heard from our teens, some people in their lives that they know in school have had to stop doing their sports because they are struggling to keep up with the other people in their sport. They just can't keep up anymore because their lung capacity just isn't there like it is. So the teens will touch on this, just like I have, and about how e-cigarettes are aerosol and they're not water vapor, no matter what people say. Absolutely not. And this one is, there's another video here that I think is it's good for everyone, teens and adults alike, in a funny, but not funny kind of way, on how we don't really know a lot about juuling and vaping and vapes like that.
In a wild turn of events, animals are demanding Juul not test on humans. Mario?
No one knows the long-term effects of juuling, so any human who uses one is being used as a lab rat. Thank you.
Let's hear from Doug the Pug and his fellow protesters.
I will never stop fighting Juul or the mailman.
Nicotine is trapping humans in a grueling cycle of addiction. Oh, excuse me. Thank you, Cupcake. Fact, no one knows the long-term effects of juuling. Do you?
So every time I see this, I'm reminded of the fact that when my parents were smoking, when they were younger, no one really knew the long-term effects of smoking either, right? Now we know it's terrible and horrible and causes all these issues and cancers. And to say that juuling or that vaping is safer than smoking, there's no evidence behind that. We don't actually know the long-term effects. We know short-term effects, like you saw on the previous slide about people in the news, the teens in the news that have had issues with their health because of vaping. So if this is what's happening short term, something's happening long term. All right, so the second myth here is that e-cigarettes don't have nicotine. I'm checking the chat real quick. So the target age range for this program is 6th grade to seniors in high school, preferably. So middle school and high school aged. And the teens that are in the program that do the presenting are usually the program itself is 13 to 18, but the teens that we have in the program right now that would present to those groups are around 16, 17 years old. So the second myth is that the e-cigarettes don't have nicotine. This video is just a clip about how a teen started lying to his parents about vaping, and how when he quit doing that and learned about vaping and how horrible it was, his life got better, his relationships in his life got better, but hiding it, really started negatively affecting his life. But once you're addicted to nicotine, it's really hard to just quit, and nicotine's involved in most instances. But over 68% of people, and it might even be higher now because of how popular vaping is now, don't even know that there's always nicotine in them. So very, very rarely you're going to find a product that doesn't have any nicotine at all in it. And a lot of people just think that this is water vapor, that it's safer, and that there's nothing in it, but there's almost always nicotine in there, and in excessively large amounts. So this part is just where the teens go kind of into quotes from other big tobacco companies that talk about, what they're selling really isn't the tobacco itself, but it's nicotine. And they go through the curriculum includes quotes and information from a couple different companies. And then this is the statement that they had to put out, a corrective statement, which I'll play for you. It's very short, that they were required to put out and say they're sorry that we lied to you. And it's kind of like a sorry, not sorry type situation.
A federal court has ordered Philip Morris USA, Laura Lard, RJ Reynolds Tobacco, and Altria to make this statement about the addictiveness of smoking and nicotine. Smoking is highly addictive. Nicotine is the addictive drug in tobacco. Cigarette companies intentionally design cigarettes with enough nicotine to create and sustain addiction. It's not easy to quit. When you smoke, the nicotine actually changes the brain. That's why quitting is so hard.
I'd love if they would add e-cigarettes to that, vapes in general. That would be the most accurate thing that they could put out. And I know that was put out a little bit ago. So as the quote that we just played said, nicotine directly affects the brain. So this is the nicotine brain. I love puns. And it talks about how things in the brain are affected, and even more so because they're younger and their brain's still developing, right? So you don't always think about how things are going to affect you long-term when you're that age, but nicotine really does affect you in your development long-term. So the last myth that the teens debunk is that e-cigarettes aren't marketed to kids. So we've all seen all of the marketing. You've seen some of at the beginning with the first clip about how they're specifically marketing to teens, but it's worse than we think, right? So even teens that have never smoked before have used e-cigarettes and they're vaping, and because they think it's like, I don't know, a totally different product or something. And the technology involved is very alluring to them. So especially if they use when they're younger, they continue to use as they get older, and they might actually go to smoking instead of vaping, which is terrible to do, one or the other. But it's pretty mind-blowing to me that middle schoolers and high schoolers, and I know that these percentages have to be higher now than they are in this graphic, because talking to my teens, it's like they see it everywhere. But it's crazy that the people that are vaping have never even been cigarette smokers in their life. And in 2018, the e-cigarette use went up 18.5%. Now, I know that that's probably gone up even more since then. I'm sure with the pandemic as well. I know I've seen it, that it's gone up even more than that. So the e-cigarettes are now the most used tobacco product by Hoosier youth and youth nationwide. Just crazy to me. But cigarette use is decreasing. So you think this is great. This is great news. And it is great news. It's great news that the kids aren't picking up cigarettes. You know, that's great. Looking at it on its own, awesome. That looks great. But e-cigarette use is literally up 400%. So really they're just replacing their tobacco products with these other products. And it's like, great, it's awesome. No one's smoking, but now people are vaping. It's just as bad. And the problem is that the increase in use is going up because of flavors, advertising, access to tobacco. Friends, family buy it for them, of course, just like back in the day when you had to buy cigarettes or have an older person buy your cigarettes. Now they can buy it online. All they have to do is click a box that says they're 18. So no one knows behind the computer if you're not 18 when you're clicking that box, so they can buy stuff online. And then things are new. They're great. New tobacco products, new technology. They want to be on the up and up, and they want to be these people that are getting this stuff before other people. And so they're really excited about new things when they come out. And they don't even really know what's in them. So they think that it's just flavoring. Or a lot of teens, families, if you talk to families and ask them what they think is in e-cigarettes, they don't know. They think it's water vapor. They think it's just flavoring here. Only 13% of people think that there's nicotine in there. So they don't even know what's going on in there. So part of the curriculum here is to educate everyone, but youth, telling them, hey, there are things in this that you don't even realize. And I remember doing voice as a teen and going through the process of learning about all the horrible chemicals and things in cigarettes. And that was a huge factor of me talking to my parents about it. So I think that, you know, educating them on this is very, very, very important. And they're all basically using flavored e-cigs. There's almost no one that I've talked to that has said, yeah, I use flavorless e-cigarettes. They're all using it for some reason. And the reason is because it tastes like, maybe for people, you know, in the millennial generation, it tastes like their youth. Here's some products and here's what the vape juice looks like attached to it, or it just tastes delicious and they associate it with things that make it taste even more delicious, like good memories. So they're using these other brands that have we've grown up with or have been popular for a long time, and they're turning it into flavors so that people are more allured towards you know, using these products. So overall, it's this sweet deception that tobacco is putting out. Teenagers like sweet things. Most adults like sweet things too, right? But teens even more so are attracted to colorful packaging, sweet flavorings, and they really use that to their advantage. Big Tobacco really does use it to their advantage. So here's just some more ads. So the curriculum on this, the teens will just go through and talk a little bit more about ads and marketing. I'm sure you guys know a lot about that already, but how people position things in their retail offices and how they even market them outside as you're driving by a gas station, let's say. And they've really made all of this normal. So if you can see in my notes here, so this is the curriculum and the notes that they talk about. So when you think about if you have seen or where you have seen vaping, it's everywhere. It's on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok is like a huge deal with youth, and they are making it seem like it's this normal thing. I think back to when the Big Tobacco is using Mr. Cool and things like that. So they're, instead of doing that, they're using influencers, and they are making sure that other teens think that this is cool and this is safe when it really isn't. Juul specifically, when they went viral, they were using influencers and they were hosting, you know, lounges at music festivals, and they basically just relied almost solely on social media, advertising. So they were making sure that other teens on these platforms knew what was going on, and they were good at it. All right, so there's one more video here.
My friend asked if I wanted to hit a Juul. That was like the new popular thing, was a Juul. It was almost like, it was weird if you didn't have one, especially with like who I hung out with. It seemed like it was just a normal day thing, you know? Like you can go to a gas station and get almost like anything you want, as long as you know someone 18, you know? It's just like a normal thing from my sophomore year to now still. Flavor really had a big deal in it because like, after the Juul, I kind of went to this thing called the Boulder, which is like you get juice and you fill it up, and like I always went to like the flavored juices that tasted the best to me, and I really like never got buzzed as much as I used to. It would just be like only in the mornings I would really get buzzed, you know, because I'd have that 8-hour break from when I slept. So after that buzz, like I would just be hitting it just to hit it. Sometimes I go to the gas station and it'd be like, so you get a Juul starter kit, which is like a Juul, a charger, and 4 pods. And it used to be $50. And after a while, like ever since like new devices came out, it would go to like $20. $20 for a Juul, a charger, and 4 pods. Like that's honestly like a good deal, because like a Juul used to cost $50 and pods would cost 20. So together that's 70. But if you can get the whole thing for 20, that literally like sells it so much better. Because
so he's basically talking about how this was a great deal. The marketing was great. It was a great deal for him, and that's why he did it. So at the end, the teens just go through what the myths are and how they've debunked them going through this curriculum. And this is the call to action for them. So they're telling the teens they can get involved with us, that we can be, they can be a part of our group to educate themselves, be a part of the community, be proactive and reactive what's going on, and helping those around them that are already vaping to quit vaping. So then there's just information on our social media. that they have the ability to quit. Texting is great for teens for quitting. So this is a good resource for them, just like the ones that we have for Indiana. And then this would be my information here at the end. And that's it. That's my questions. If you guys have questions, oop, I see a chat thing. So this program is presented from our teens to anyone in the community that wants it to be presented to. We can train other teens, but we can also go and present at any of these locations. Just email me and we can get involved. My teens just got trained. So once they do a couple practice rounds, they should be ready to go. Thanks, Donna.
Emily, I have a question real quick.
Yep.
What is your thoughts on taking teens to like meet people that are sick, or even like a doctor or a hospital setting?
I think that teens, I mean, as anyone will normally benefit from something like that. But I think a lot of what hits home for them the most are seeing people their age. So if they're people their age, like that clip of the people, of the guy talking in the hospital has been really influential in it hits teens really hard, but also saying teens in your community, right? Hey, I'm a teen, I go to the high school one town over. And I don't know about taking them to these places, but I know seeing videos of them has been beneficial. So I can only imagine that taking them to see these people would be also as beneficial.
Okay.
Although that's something I would have to ask about doing because I am unsure of that.
Okay.
Thank you. Anybody else have any other questions?
There was one question in the chat box about where it's available at, not only because there are people on this call that are not from Indiana. So Voice is actually a program that's specifically Indiana. However, there are very similar programs across the country. Each state tends to call it something different. So I would check with your tobacco commission or whoever works with your state health department and see if there's a program affiliated. Colorado calls theirs Uprise. It's very similar youth empowerment type of thing for peer, education. So, and yes, so Emily, if you want to post your email in the chat one more time in case you got that. Okay.
I got it.
All right.
Yeah, each state has their own thing. So there's something, even if it's not specifically this, it's going to be very similar.
Okay. Are we ready to move on? Any other questions?
Thanks, Emily. Carrie, thanks for clearing that up. And I just want to make sure that our guests from out of state know that there are tobacco coalitions in every state and in a lot of counties throughout that state. So they should be able to just Google that or check with their Department of Health to find out what's actively happening in their communities. All right, Carrie.
Okay, yes.
All right.
I'm gonna get us back up here. And all right. So what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead. Now, for some reason, I'm not seeing it. So hang on 1 minute. Okay, sorry. So a couple things I wanted to clarify real quick. So while Voice is an Indiana program, Catch My Breath is actually a nationwide program. So no matter what state you're in, you will be able to definitely reach out to Catch My Breath. If you are in Porter County, you could contact me directly and I can train you. If you're an educator or a youth facilitator, I'm more than happy to train you. So in different folks throughout the state are training Catch My Breath in Indiana because we are using it right now through our tobacco prevention and education efforts. But you can contact them no matter what state you're in and they will have a program for you. So if you want to be a trainer in this, there's a fee you can pay to become a trainer. But as someone who wants to bring the program in, if you can get a trainer to come to you. The program is actually free. So I just wanted to clarify that we are with the Tobacco Education and Prevention Coalition for Porter County. We are affiliated with Valparaiso University's College of Nursing and Health Professions. So we're a grant-based program, and the university is actually the lead agency on that. So we work very closely with them. And the other thing is that many times what we find is that there's a great need. Unfortunately, with COVID, we found that folks were saying that we got put on the back burner with this vaping epidemic, which you would have thought it would have kind of spurned us to be more proactive with the vaping epidemic. But for some reason, they were using it as an excuse, and we don't feel like that's an excuse. We feel like it's actually a reason why vaping education needs to be put on the forefront. So I really appreciate all of you being here today. I'm not sure exactly, I know there are some social workers, some educators, and people from all kinds of not-for-profits in other areas. Well, whether you're a parent or you could use this program in your business, either way, it's great information to have as a tool, because you can always take it to your children's school or the school system that you live in, or the organization that you work with, and find out how they can help promote these kinds of programs to kind of provide that counter pressure against vaping. So I appreciate all of you being here today, and I'm excited to share the Catch My Breath program with you, because it is about bringing folks together to work towards a healthier environment for kids and helping young people develop healthy habits early in life. And that's what it's all about, right? Is guiding our children in the process of being healthy for a lifetime. Now, I will get to skip through some of these things quickly, because Emily actually covered some of the things, and I don't want to be too duplicative, but I wanted to show you this chart that shows you where Catch My Breath and Sweet Deception fall. And they both fall under the prevention area, because in Vape Free Indiana, we have a three-pronged approach. And so both of our programs fall under the prevention area. However, there are other programs that fall under public education, and we also have cessation efforts going on. As far as Porter County, we are part of one of 43 counties that work with the Indiana Department of Health to do many programs like this, and we participate in so many tobacco-free efforts, and that could be advocacy. We work with housing, we work with health providers, and all kinds of folks. So this is a tip of the iceberg for us. And we can take this presentation in fact, we just had a whole conversation about flavors that took us about an hour and a half. So flavors is a huge deal right now, including menthol and the marginalized populations that are affected by it. And I could spend the whole time talking about that, but I won't. I'm here today to talk about Catch My Breath. So if you're interested even in any of those areas or any kind of specific area that we talk about today, please feel free to contact us about it. And most of you know what e-cigarettes are, so I don't want to go into a lot, but I just wanted to show you that exactly the components. And all e-cigarettes have the basic components of a battery, a heater, atomizer, a cartridge or tank, and a microprocessor. And so we kind of liken that to no matter whether you have an iPhone or an Android, a Mac or a PC, they all essentially do the same thing and have the same parts, right? So that's basically what an e-cigarette is. And those e-cigarettes have evolved, like Emily was talking about. I won't take you through all the cigarettes, but the first one did look very similar to a cigarette. And some of those are still out there, and they still look really good in a backpack. It kind of looks like a pen, but now these later generations are more disposable, and they can be discarded, and they're a lot cheaper to buy. And Juul is still a heavy hitter in the area, but they're starting to lose some of their market share to some of the other items, I guess. And so there has been a limited ban on flavor, but 81% of kids who ever used tobacco products started with a flavored tobacco product. And so we know that, especially in high school, 84.7% of school users and 73.9% of middle school users used a flavored tobacco product. Fruit flavors are the most popular flavor for both middle and high school. They kind of go off after that. into other flavors, but they definitely all like flavored products for sure. And so there has been some recent FDA action to try to remove flavors from disposable products. Menthol is one we're having a hard time getting rid of, and menthol actually targets very heavily the African-American population, very unfairly, and they've been a target using menthol for decades and decades. And so it's not just youth that are affected, although this program is specifically for youth, but like Emily said, there's other products on the market. What I wanted to show you real quick was some of these other products, and we're finding that the tobacco industry is actually starting to lab create nicotine. And so they're trying to say we will be tobacco free by 2025 or 2030. And they're really technically tobacco free, but they're creating the nicotine, which is the addictive substance that they're trying to hook these kids on. So they're trying to give the illusion that these are safer products, and they're really not safer products at all. So Emily brought up Mr. Fogg, and the reason I brought up Mr. Fogg is in a recent community conversation that was held by our coalition just last week. We were told that this product seems to be the most popular in schools right now, and one resource officer tends to confiscate about 3 of these every day, at least. They see the lanyard there, they like the lanyard. They like to wear it around their neck. It comes with 2,000 puffs, 2,000. That's a lot of nicotine. And the scary thing is they can puff on that all day and pretty much go unnoticed for the most part, although resource officers and teachers are looking for these. They cost about $10 to $12 a piece, so they're super cheap. And our smoking age is actually 21 here, not 18. So, but Emily was right. They can click on any website and say they're 21 and they can purchase these products. And so they come in all kinds of cool colors and are just really attractive, like we talked about. The key thing is, the brain development. And so we really have to try to get these youth to not start using nicotine products or tobacco products until they're age 25. We know that once they hit age 25, they probably won't start. And so if we can keep them from starting, we are at a much better position to prevent them from becoming a user of tobacco products at all. So it's really a difficult process to try to make sure that we get to them. But the problem is biology. It's the brain synapses that actually over time, if young people's brains build synapses faster than the adult brains, and nicotine changes the way those synapses are formed, basically. So I don't want to get into too much science, but because of this, nicotine in adolescence may also increase risk for future addiction to drugs. And it's very important to note that until recently, Juul was the leader, and they have a high nicotine concentration of 5% in one pod. So that basically means that a Juul pod and some disposables is basically equal to the amount of cigarettes in a pack. But most of the puff bars and things today they way exceed a pack of cigarettes in the amount of nicotine that is in them. So these folks are figuring out how to ramp up that nicotine level and get our students addicted faster and more in depth. So it's a scary process. It is definitely not safe. They think it's a lot of youth will say it's water, flavored water. It's definitely not flavored water. It is not harmless, and they try to sell it to their parents that it's harmless. I know I heard a story about one student who asked for a vape pen from their grandparent for Christmas in their Christmas stocking and got it because the grandparent didn't even bother to read what it said. And so some people will say, well, it's less harmful. Well, it might be less harmful in a way that if you jump out of a 5-story window or the 10th story window, it might be less harmful to jump out of a 5-story window, but you're still going to get hurt. Either way, it's not harmless. So there are specific reasons why our youth vape. And the National Institute on Drug Abuse conducted a survey, and they do it every year. And they assess students, and they found that the #1 reason why students start vaping is, first of all, just to experiment to see what it's like. And the second is because it tastes good, and that's because of all the flavors and making it taste good, because the scientists have studied the flavors that our children have grown up with and like for decades. It's no mistake they pick the flavors they pick. They are not randomly selected. They are targeted flavors to target youth. The third thing is Tide, because the number 3 was tied with, I want to have a good time with my friends and to relax or relieve attention. And if we know anything about nicotine, we know that it doesn't really relax or relieve attention. If they are addicted and then they take a hit, obviously it makes them feel better. And that's what they're confusing for relaxation and attention. So just some of the signs that a teen might be vaping, if it's your teen or if it's kids in school that you work with, or kids out in the community that you work with, we have learned as someone uses a nicotine product, the chemical is actually absorbed into their system and their mood and pleasure centers are aroused. The tolerance and physical dependence for that substance without it increases and as use keeps going. So going without nicotine can produce withdrawal symptoms as well as craving for more nicotine, and the cycle continues to repeat. So as we continue to learn about vaping, there's signs to look for to identify if children are vaping. And it's hard to tell sometimes, because they're teenagers oftentimes, and teenagers are teenagers. They act like teenagers. So how do you know if they're just being a teenager, or are they being moody or anxious or irritable because they're vaping? So oftentimes there's other little signs that go with it. So oftentimes someone who's dependent on nicotine has very difficult concentrating. They're impulsive. They might have to leave class more often because they want to go into the vape bathroom. Usually there's restrooms that are known for kids to go to vape. I know I was talking to one of our local YMCAs and they said it was known as the vape place. I mean, everybody was going into vape. So we had to create signage and make an extra effort to keep those teens out of there, to keep them from vaping. So if you're at home and suddenly there's an interest in burning candles or incense or wearing perfume or cologne, they could be trying to hide that sweet smell. It's not a smoky smell, but it's definitely noticeable, and you might smell those sweet flavors. Other symptoms can be, eating patterns that change, weight gain, weight loss, mouth being exposed to chemicals and vapor. They might increase in thirst and have sores around the mouth because of that increase in vapor use. And so I just wanted to show you how it got out of control so quickly. You have a pretty good idea probably of how they work, but the dangers involved. In this section, when we train folks, we try to determine the extent of the youth vaping epidemic and get at some of the root causes. Disposable e-cigarettes use increased 1,000% just between 2019 and 2020. And that's crazy. That's among high school current e-cigarette users, and approximately 400% increase in middle school users. So we know that 3.6 million United States youth reported use of e-cigarettes in 2020. And among current users, more than 8 in 10 reported using those flavored products. And again, we are spending a lot of our focus on my grant cycle talking about marginalized populations and how they are affected by flavored products. And we also talk a lot about youth and flavored products. Here's the one statistic that really scares the public health community. Despite an overall increase in youth using traditional cigarettes, the data from the National Youth Tobacco Survey actually show an overall increase in tobacco use. They did a study at the University of Pittsburgh and found that 47.7% of those who use e-cigarettes at baseline began smoking cigarettes within 18 months, compared to just 10.2% of non-e-cigarette users. So non-e-cigarette users, within 18 months, 10.2% of them are smoking cigarettes. 47.7% of the e-cigarette users were smoking cigarettes within 18 months. And that's an alarming difference to us. So we do see a direct correlation with e-cigarettes jumping folks to regular cigarettes. I don't think cigarettes are ever going to go away. So it's important that we continue to educate our youth on the dangers of cigarettes. And the National Institute of Health reports that approximately 14% of our youth don't know what's in their e-cigarettes. And Emily showed you a nice graph that 66% of our youth think it's just flavoring. They think it's flavored water. There's no water in those e-liquids. That's all chemical. It's not water, it's chemical and flavoring. So, you know, Juul did have the main market again on that, but there's some others coming out of the woodwork here. The interesting things is they get really sneaky about how they hide their Juuls. So if they want to take them to school or if they want to hide them from parents, there's they try to make them more fashionable. Many companies have created cases for their phones as in picture F, and trendy hand knitted vape sweaters as in picture E. We discussed vape pens earlier. Picture D reflects a vape that's also a pen. So it's really a true vape pen. And there are many kinds of exercise watches, even ones that are actually an e-cigarette, as pictured in picture A. There's even clothing. You can see her sucking on her hoodie strings, and that's because it's a discrete location to kind of weave the vape into there so she can smoke her vape right through her hoodie strings. And the most disturbing to me, it should be, and it should be to everyone, is picture C. He's using an inhaler that's actually a vape. It's just marketed to look like an inhaler. And that to me is really, as someone who had an asthmatic son, that's really alarming that it's being masqueraded as an inhaler. Sharpies, this is an actual Sharpie, and somebody hollowed it out and put their vape pen in there. So when that's in their backpack, parents, teachers, everyone thinks that it is actually, but this was an actual item confiscated from a student in school, and the program director for Catch My Breath, Marcella Bianco, she actually got this picture taken for us. So what you really want to know about is the actual program, and I'm going to talk about the program itself, is just why you're here. It is the first evidence-based program, and in January 2020, Catch My Breath demonstrated effectiveness in a peer-reviewed study, making it the first and currently the only evidence-based youth vaping prevention program. The study was published in Public Health Reports, the official journal of the US Surgeon General. It's a nicotine vaping prevention program, and it has been proven for effectiveness at reducing the likelihood that students will experiment with vaping. The theoretical background, for those of you who like to know what kind of background it comes from psychologically, is social cognitive theory, which views health behaviors as products of personal, social, and environmental factors, so all three. And in addition to building knowledge, Catch My Breath disrupts normative beliefs such as the notion that everybody's doing it. Students develop skills to help them resist peer pressure, which is super important because that's one of the keys. And they also talk about misinformation that perpetuates online, kind of like what Emily was talking about, those misconceptions, misinformation. To kind of clarify, why would we have Catch My Breath and also Sweet Deception? Catch My Breath is a program that I typically would train educators in, or folks that are putting this into the curriculum in a classroom and incorporating it maybe into a health class or a PE class or science. There's a STEM component, and where Sweet Deception is literally youth targeting youth. So they would tend to do that on a peer-to-peer level completely, although there is some peer-to-peer interaction here when selected by the facilitator or the teacher. But the question, going back to the topic, the question at hand is not will students, what will they do if they're exposed to e-cigarettes? It should be what will they do when they are exposed to e-cigarettes, because they probably already have been exposed to e-cigarettes if they're in this age range of 13 to 18. So this gives them real world scenarios and helps them work through those real world scenarios. And the program was actually designed by a lead researcher. His name was Professor Stephen Kelder from the University of Texas Health Science Center in the Houston School of Public Health. So I know we have Texas folks here, and this was based out of Houston. So Dr. Kelder was a senior scientific editor of the 2016 Surgeon General's report on youth e-cigarette use and has over 30 years of experience developing and researching child health programs. So based on the findings of that peer-reviewed research paper, you know, I want to just give you an idea of what it can do for schools across the country, or what it's been doing for schools across the country. So we're looking at middle school today. I asked Donna which area to focus on. We're going to focus on the middle school section, like 7th, 8th grade-ish. The average 7th grade class size in the United States school is approximately 192 students. If we would do nothing to those 192 students, 17 of those 7th grade students will try an e-cigarette by the end of this school year. If the school implements Catch My Breath, 8 of those 17 students, or 45% of them, will not try an e-cigarette this year. So if every public school in the country implemented Catch My Breath, we'd have 153,600 fewer 7th grade kids that would try an e-cigarette this year alone. So since we began our broader dissemination with our efforts from CVS Health, the program is free. It's been adopted by schools across all 50 states. We've already reached more than 1 million students thanks to a diverse community of support that includes private foundations, local departments of health, state education agencies, and school districts. Catch My Breath is available for elementary, middle, and high schools, and schools can choose to implement the program in any grade or all grades, and in each track can be standalone. The program has 4 lessons that each take between 35 and 40 minutes a lesson. We recommend that you deliver 1 lesson a week over the course of 4 weeks, though we leave that delivery timeline up to you. And the lessons are a combination of teacher presentations and peer facilitated small group discussions and projects. There's some really cool things that are implemented, and there's some extra stuff, supplemental stuff that teachers can use if they choose to, which I'll touch on in a sec. It has an extensive teacher materials to make the program delivery straightforward and easy. So it's super easy for teachers to use. It doesn't take a lot of work, so the work has been done for the teachers. In fact, the pilot study showed that 91% of teachers felt confident in their ability to deliver the lessons. We reached such a high teacher confidence level by providing PowerPoint presentations with slide-by-slide scripts that guide teachers every step of the way. Or facilitators. You can also use facilitators and teachers. The Catch My Breath training also gives teachers a base of knowledge that help them feel prepared to answer any questions that students might have about e-cigarettes as well. It can be taught in a variety of subjects, like I said before, science, health, PE, homeroom, advisory. Also, there's a PE supplement that, of course, incorporates physical activity alongside with some core components, and it can be used also in youth organizations. There's a testimonial. We have tons of testimonials from teachers and students, but this teacher said the lesson plans are written in a straightforward way, which enables teachers to cover 4 lessons with very little prep. Another great feature of the Catch curriculum is that as long as you have access to a copier, all materials are provided for you. You can also do this online, though. You can do this with distance learning as well. And many students actually give good feedback. You know, now that I learned it's really bad, I definitely won't do it. Now that they know more, they want to teach other kids or tell their friends not to do it as well. So what components are in the program? And some people are very concerned. If you work in SEL or CASEL, you might be pleased to find out that the alignment of this program is with academic standards. So it's really easy to put into the curriculum because we meet all the criteria for all the academic standards, including the SEL and the CASEL. So it fits into Catch My Breath you can fit it into crowded schedules because it is aligned, because you just pop it into the program, and we meet all of the state health education standards, allowing implementation to meet requirements the teacher needs to meet. So social emotional learning, most of you know what that is, but that's how children and adults learn to understand and manage their emotions and show empathy for others and establish positive relationships. So this fits right in with that, trying to help them do those things. And then the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, or CASEL, is also the authority and gold standard for SEL integration in the classroom. And Catch Global Foundation references CASEL standards across all the programming. So Catch My Breath incorporates that SEL, specifically CASEL competencies, to the curriculum to create a holistic learning environment for students and teachers alike. And as you can see, and I won't go into them in depth, but the 5 CASEL competencies are self-awareness. And we look at a multitude of things in self-awareness as being well-grounded and having strengths. Self-management, which is super important with managing stress and impulses, because they're tending to use the vapes to manage themselves, and then their impulsivity actually gets worse. social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. So all of those things are covered under the SEL guidelines here. So through each grade level and lesson, we incorporate many educational teaching strategies in here. So some of you educators might be pleased to know that we do incorporate many things. The central pillar is collaborative learning. We do also use peer-led discussions, but sometimes the teacher picks the peers, and sometimes you have a session where you work with a peer group first for 30 minutes and then have them do some of the activities throughout the lessons, or maybe you just meet with the peers for a few minutes before each session. It's really up to the facilitator on how they want to use that, but there is peer education so that students' own voice can be heard again. As far as strategies and educational strategies, Bloom's taxonomy for the rigor of the education is very much kept in mind. And so words like evaluate, analyze, synthesize, and those kinds of terms that educators need to be aware of are focused on and definitely addressed. There's guided notes provided so that you can direct students to and have them focus on important information for a portion of the lesson. For example, a worksheet with blanks could be used during a lecture or video. You can check for understanding if you want to do that in a non-graded way. And criteria for success is just to see if they have the skills and the exit strategies. We try to help them practice the exit strategies when they fall under peer pressure and things like that. And then scaffolding can be used as well, starting with you know, the most basic concepts and working towards the most difficult concepts. So there are lesson plans all set up for you. They have the learning objectives, the overview, how long does it take, all the materials that you need to conduct the lesson, no matter what grade level. It comes with a detailed lesson plan. And that could be, you could use the videos, the print materials. There are key terms to be used in the lesson. And then they have the slide-by-slide overview. They tell you everything that you need to know and everything that you need to use. It's super simple to use. You go on their website and everything. Once you take the class and become trained, you have access to the website and all of the materials that you would ever want and more. So this was all done through Catch Global Foundation with a partnership with Discovery Education and CVS Health Foundation. And those of you might notice that CVS does not sell tobacco products. So they wanted to do something for the health of their communities. And so they also helped us breathe new life into this Catch curriculum to expand content areas and widen the program for us. So each lesson has a set of scripted presentation slides. All slides live in Google Slides, but can be downloaded as PowerPoint. And we always recommend that educators or facilitators reference the newest slides on the website because they tend to constantly update information. And so you want to keep your slides current if you're trained in the program so that you can go on and get the most recent slides and most recent statistics and information. Most lessons throughout all grades have a student activity worksheet to accompany key concepts. And some of the activities can be individual or they can be part of the peer-led group. And activity sheets can be found in two places. So you can get activity sheets in that have green hyperlinks throughout them so that you can click and find what you need immediately. And then you can also find that they're at the end of the resource guide so that they put all of the activity sheets there, but all the information is easy to find and already done for you. So there are very many tools that you can use, and the most prominent that teachers also like to use are the pre and post surveys. Catch Global does not do the pre and post surveys at the moment, but teachers that want that data can do those surveys to get that information. So while there are lessons for elementary and middle schoolers and high schoolers as well, I was just going to focus real quick on the 7th grade lessons because we don't have time to cover it all today. There are 4 sessions. So session 1, for example, in 7th grade gives you an idea that the students will engage to think about why tobacco products like e-cigarettes is a big decision, and students would be asked to look at statements about e-cigarettes and determine if they're true or false. They'd investigate nicotine and other chemicals found in e-cigarettes. The session ends with a video as well as a group discussion about the negative consequences of using e-cigarettes. Session 2 would help students understand the consequences of nicotine addiction and common pressures to vape. Students would discover the percentage of middle school and high school students that choose not to use e-cigarettes to reinforce them that some students are choosing not to vape. And session 3 would explore 2 additional forms of pressures to try e-cigarettes that they may face. There's pressures from others and pressures from advertising. And Emily talked a little bit about the advertising. We could talk about that all day, but students need to know that it's out there and how to use these 3 strategies to stick to their personal rules about smoking and vaping. We teach them how to avoid, refuse, and exit. And they'll analyze risky situations and practice these strategies so that next time they're met with that peer pressure, they know how to respond in order to stay vape free. And in the last session, students complete and present their Be Vape Free social media campaign project, and they watch 2 videos that describe the consequences of nicotine addiction and review what's learned from Catch My Breath. And students would, sorry, I just hopped around. Students would definitely learn how to evaluate the videos that describe the consequences of nicotine addiction and review what they learned from Catch My Breath. The session ends with each student making a public commitment about vaping prevention. So we try to get them at that point to commit to not vaping. Tons of other supplemental materials that I can't even possibly go through today, but I will let you know that through that partnership with CVS Health Discovery and Catch, there are STEM and humanities supplemental lessons developed for 5th grade and 6th to 8th grade. And in addition, all the program resources we've listed also have a full list of Educator 411 resources. So they even give you things for the schools like intercom announcements that can be used over the PA system. They give you posters and supplemental materials for PE. And they publish distance learning recommendations and guidelines, so it can easily be done through distance learning should you need to do that. Posters are free if you want to print them off on your own, or if you want to buy a set, you can buy a set from Catch Global Foundation, but they're free to print on your own. There's we need to have parent communication sources, and they do provide parents information that can be given to parents, because parents are often ill-informed, they're often scared, and they're often unsure of what's going on. Is my student vaping? Are they not? Or they know they're vaping, but how do I get them to quit? So there's a lot of resources for parents on the site that you can share with the parents of your students or the youth in the group that you're working with. And they're also recorded videos, and they're recorded in Spanish and English. So that's awesome, because then we're reaching populations that need to be reached. So they have all kinds of videos, and there's also all kinds of resources that they refer you to, which many of those resources I'm linking you to. One quick thing I wanted to mention was, any of you familiar with service learning or students doing service projects? And if you like to encourage your students to do these service projects, there are service projects for empowering students and make a meaningful contribution to vaping prevention efforts while also getting school credit. There's scholarship opportunities through Catch My Breath, and workplace skills like public speaking, advocacy, and event planning can be honed and worked on through some of these projects. So usually the projects run from October to May, and then they give away those awards and scholarships in the springtime. The students self-initiate their projects, and they can be working in advocacy, communication, where they create a media campaign or a PSA. They can have some kind of event that they can host, or they can do a fundraiser, and all of these things are things they can compete in to get those scholarships and those opportunities. I used to teach service learning, so I love the fact that they offer those projects. If you want to, if you're not in the area and you can't enroll through me, if you're in Porter County, I can help you get enrolled, and I can, provide training for you if you're interested. But as far as if you're somewhere else and you just want to share this resource with others, you can go to catchmybreath.org and you can enroll, or you can kind of gather your own information and share it with people who might want to enroll or become trained. And you can start at letsgocatch.org, and you would click on the vaping prevention program. Catch does a few other programs for like physical fitness and nutrition. So you want to make sure you're on the vaping prevention program when you do that. And here's my contact information. If you just want to get a hold of me, I can help you out. I can set up a training for you if you're in Porter County. If you are in another part of the state, we can figure out who that person is that you should get connected with that can help you out and get you trained. And I am doing something different recently. So if you're in Porter County, I'm training some nursing and public health students right now, so that for teachers who don't have the time to get trained right now, I'm actually going to be sending some of those students out to do the Catch program in our local school systems. So, but again, if you're in another state, you can reach out to anybody through catch.org and find someone who can help you get the same program in your state. So thank you.
We will go ahead and leave Carrie's information up there. And Carrie, can you throw it in the chat as well?
I can. Let me.
Perfect. So I think we ran a little bit over in our time for the way we usually format things because there was just so much information. Carrie, thanks for sharing. I know we put an email blast out inviting everyone to be part of the community conversation that you hosted last week, I think that was. And I think a couple of folks from here probably were there. That we will provide you with a link to that community conversation that had so many more professionals and information about vaping and the different brands and flavors and what to look for and how to have conversations with your kids. We're going to include that link with all of your information on with Friday's email. So again, on Friday, we will send the recording for this webinar, the recording from the community conversation that was hosted last week around this subject. We will provide you with a resource page that Carrie provided to us, and there will be your evaluation on there. Please take, it's like 8 questions, so please take time to report back to us what you think, what you need, how we can best help and serve you as we continue to look forward for topics and speakers. I think rather than going to breakout rooms today, we're just going to open the floor right now for questions. Maybe there was something about vaping that you wanted to know that Carrie didn't touch on today. She is an expert. I'm sure between her and Emily, they can answer your questions. So if not, she can provide you with a where to go to get the information. So let's go ahead and just open it up. We're going to take 10 minutes. And then I think we're going to go ahead and close at 12:30 today rather than doing the breakout rooms like we usually do. So if you have any questions, you can either throw them in the chat, or if you want to just unmute yourself and ask questions, go for it.
Okay, I have a question. What is your thoughts on testing for nicotine with teenagers? Like I've seen kits at the drugstore and stuff like that. Do you think that that would be?
Yeah, I do, especially for parents who aren't sure if their students are using nicotine. It's just like the other drug tests that some parents buy to test their own students. I know that even one of our local high schools was looking at using those at school for students, and they were getting a grant to be able to do that. I think they did it last year. And so they were wondering if they were trying to assess whether they wanted to move forward with it or not. You know, I think in some respects, my own personal opinion, I'm a parent, you know, and my kids are grown now, but I was pretty tough, and I kept, even though I knew my kids at the time I didn't think were doing drugs, you know, I kept those drug testing kits, and they knew I had them, and they knew I'd pull them out anytime I wanted to. And I think that helped keep them on the up and up a little bit. So I think sometimes just if kids know you have them, then they know and you come from a good place. Like, I don't want you to ruin your health, and if I have to test you with this, I mean, that's just the way I did it. I don't know if that's the right way, or if anyone's in disagreement, feel free to disagree. We all parent differently, but I always felt like it gave me a little bit of an edge to say I could, if I wanted to do this. And so, I just think it's so prevalent. Vaping is so prevalent, and it's so much easier to hide than cigarettes were. The kids don't smell. But what we're seeing from the pulmonary folks is that by the time they get to a pulmonary person, they've got significant damage already, is what I'm being told by the pulmonary folks, because parents think the kids have a cold that won't go away. They can't figure it out. They go back and forth to the doctor. They might try antibiotics. It turns out to be a vaping issue. And so it's usually the adult pulmonary folks that figure it out, because they're asking those questions and they don't need the parent in the room anymore. They can chase the parent out and ask an 18-year-old, hey, are you doing this? Are you vaping? And they usually say, yeah, because they say, I could see that you have, these symptoms. And so it's noticing those symptoms, but yet realizing there's a significant component to mental health and the way they behave. So if you do notice behavior changes, it really does mess with their impulsivity. And the counselors will tell you, the people that I know in mental health have told me they see a lot of kids that are really having focusing issues, impulsivity issues, and they're just more irritable. And it goes beyond being normal teen stuff, but it's sometimes hard to discern between what's a normal teen and what's not. So I'm not opposed to those. I don't know how other people feel. Feel free to voice your opinions, but I think it could be a good tool.
To some of the points that you were making, Todd Willis has been one of our speakers a couple of times, and he was one of your panelists last week on the community conversation. And he was sharing some of that same thing, that there's a direct link to the mental health concerns of adolescents. And he was also sharing, I think it was him that was sharing, that he sees this as one of the most addictive drugs out there right now. And while he doesn't like the phrase gateway, often it can lead to, experimenting with marijuana and smoking other things. So, there's different ideas about what is a gateway drug and what is not. And I don't remember if it was him or someone else on the panel that also talked about nicotine being one of the hardest addictive behaviors to stop, and we don't often hear about that. When you think about drug addiction, substance abuse disorders, you think about heroin or pills or meth, but you don't always include nicotine in that. And oftentimes, it's an overlooked addiction that causes severe health problems that sometimes are not immediately seen or evident, but can cause severe damage to a person's health over time.
Right. He said many people have, addictive personalities, and some are addicted to, gambling, some are addicted to chocolate, some are addicted to, nicotine. And so it's just, if a child happens to have an addictive personality and they get started so early, it really, it just perpetuates because of the strength of these devices that they're using has so much nicotine in it. It's just blowing cigarettes out of the water with the level of nicotine that it has, and they can use it more. A kid can't smoke a cigarette in school, but they can slide a vape up their sleeve, or they can run to the bathroom and nobody's going to smell it for the most part. And so it's just so
not going to set off any smoke detectors.
It's easier to use. Now I'm told there are detectors now. And so I know some of the schools are looking at, I got a call from a school that wanted to know, should we put those in? I don't know. I don't know if they work. I haven't investigated them enough, but I mean, I think that resource officers are really at a stretch to try to figure out how to nip this problem in the bud, because that's all they do all day long is run around confiscating these and trying to see if someone's in the bathroom. But yet you can't have cameras in the bathroom, but these kids are hiding them in the ceiling tiles, in the crack between the hinge on the bathroom door. They're hiding them in all kinds of disgusting places in the bathroom and leaving them there, but then they're asking to go to the restroom 4 or 5 times in one class. And the teachers, that's
Well-
so distracting to educators and, you know.
And then there's the students who aren't vaping who won't go to the bathroom because they don't want to be caught with the
Yep.
wrong
Yeah.
time.
Yeah,
And
That's
so,
one of my kids.
we hear
we
that
had-
repeatedly. We hear that
Yeah.
repeatedly.
We
Mhm.
had, in our focus groups with our youth last year, we had several girls in particular that said, I will go all day without going to the bathroom because there are so
Yep.
many kids vaping and I don't want to be accused of something I'm not doing. And then I had a couple girls who were sharing, they actually ended up with UTIs because they're not emptying their bladders.
Mm.
So it's causing health problems for those who aren't using, right? So
Right.
some interesting conversation in the chat, Carrie, if you want to
That's what I was just looking at. I was just
you want to take
checking.
a quick look at that about
Trina was
support
wondering
systems.
first, I'm sorry. Trina was wondering first while you were presenting what the first lesson was for the 7th and 8th graders.
Yes, it was, I saw that and I was gonna figure out how to pop that back up for, but it was understanding, distinguishing the facts about e-cigarettes and tobacco products from common myths was one thing. And then describing the negative effects of e-cigarette use and predicting and understanding the possible effects tobacco use could have on a teen's life. Those were the 3 things that are mainly covered in lesson 1.
Can you put kind of, is there a link that you could provide to where they could see like an outline or something? Or
For the lesson, they could
the
actually,
topics?
they could actually go on the Catch website, which I showed. I'll pop it in the chat box because I showed it on one of the slides. Hang on here. Because they can go to I believe it's Let's Go Catch.
Yeah, Trina's interested in sharing that information with her supervisor so she could possibly be trained. So-
Trina, if you email me, I will send you the information that you can give to your supervisor. And then all of that website information will be on there. If you want to do that, my email is in the chat box and I can send that directly to her.
Perfect.
Because we have some documents that would probably be more helpful than just having her write down what the lessons are. I can send those to her, then they can go on and look at all of that stuff. Yeah. They have great websites, easy to find sources. PowerPoints are already done, handouts, activities already done. It's just a matter of putting the time in your schedule. And if you're not a school teacher, it's easy to do with a youth group of some sort, whether it's a church group or 4-H or Boys and Girls Club or anything like that. We've done vaping prevention programs for Boys and Girls Clubs and some other organizations as well. But I think the need is there no matter what. Investigate, just make sure it's an evidence-based program. Maybe you find this isn't the one for you. I don't get anything for marketing this one, right? I'm not making any money off this. So if I think vaping education and prevention needs to be done somewhere and every place. And I know that the teachers and the administrators and the resource officers are getting overwhelmed by this awful epidemic. Unfortunately, COVID kind of took the forefront. What they needed to do was not make this a secondary issue. It should have been part of the COVID problem because these kids were actually buying hits off of each other's vapes during COVID. They'd pay a kid, I don't want my mom to find my vape, so I'm going to pay you $1, you give me a hit off your vape. So it was awful for the COVID stuff. They were sharing devices and hits and everything else. It was, and the kids can get it at school. There's dealers dealing these vape devices. I get handed cases of vape devices from resource officers that confiscate them. So if they're not buying them, they can easily buy them at school from somebody else. So, and I was even told by one of my college students on campus that it's easy to go into any of the places around and they're not really checking for ID, which kind of alerted me. So yeah, they're getting their hands on them pretty easy. Let's see, does anybody else have a question?
Jill wanted to know what the court's view was about vaping in Porter County, and do they send youth to our program, or is there a self-directed program online they can complete as part of their court involvement, or like probation for or parents' use, or something they can complete? When I talked to some of the people at the schools, they said that they send their students caught with THC to Recovery Connection. And then Porter Stark has tobacco treatment specialists that have services, but as in terms of the court, I'm not sure if there's a mandated program that they go to, but it's not like me.
Usually the schools are handling it. If it's a school resource officer kind of situation, usually the schools handle it. I know, for example, Chesterton had a person, I know he retired, but they had a person who would, any athlete and or any other student who got caught vaping would have to go through his program to do that, because they were trying, you know, we have a discussion coming up, and that's going to be one you're hearing in your communities, is the punitive part of the conversation. What really should we be making the consequences? Because we don't want students not getting into, we don't want them not coming to school because they're in out of school suspension. We want them in school. They go home, they can just vape some more. We want them to, you know, not have their academic careers ruined or lose a scholarship. We don't want them to deal with those kinds of things. We want to help them with the addiction. And so how can we best help them with the addiction? What kinds of punitive measures? And that's going to be a conversation that we are going to be having in Porter County with our schools. That's one thing we're charged with, and we're going to have that conversation to make sure that those punitive measures are optimal for student outcomes and to get rid of the addiction.
We found that some schools have harsher punitive measures and being caught than others do. Some of them follow different state guidelines for athletes, for example. But our teams want to focus on that this year and make sure that the teens are getting the help that they need without their lives being uprooted or ruined in any particular way because they have an addiction that they probably didn't even know they were starting in the first place.
But anybody left here, I just want to say real quick, anybody left here, if you're in Porter County, we would love to have you join our coalition. You know, we need great minds to kind of guide us on this path, and we are glad to have anybody. So you can reach out to the contact information that Donna will provide you or that I've put in the chat. And we would love to, I could have a conversation with you if you think it's something you would like to do. We need help in all kinds of areas, to not only with vaping, but in, like I said, in housing, in working with preschool children, working with schools, working with doctors, nurses, healthcare providers, social service agencies. We like to collaborate with any agency that serves a population, especially a marginalized population. So please get a hold of us if we can collaborate with you in any way.
Yeah, and Carrie, Rebecca is asking if you have a list of schools that are currently utilizing the program. Could she just reach out to you directly using your email?
Yeah, so we right now just got our contracts with our schools. So I could simply say 6 out of the 7 school systems in Porter County are all contracted with us for to let us come in and do some of these programs. It's just getting the teachers signed up to actually participate in the training themselves. And so
Carrie, if they're not in Lake County, like, I mean, if they're in Lake County or Stark County, who should they contact in those areas?
Yeah, so in Lake County, it's Irene Boone Phillips. And I can, hang on. Let me see if I can give you her. Well, you have Irene's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm pulling it right now.
Okay, so I would contact Irene. Stark, I don't think currently has anyone. They were talking about it. I'll have to check on that one because they didn't have a program, but they might have someone handling some of their things right now. So I know that, because somebody was interested in working with Stark, but I don't think Stark County is covered right now. So sometimes, you know, if you need a program and you're in a close by county, sometimes we can still help you out with that. Or work on something. If it's our youth traveling, like if it's Sweet Deception and our youth can't travel that far, we can always work together and do something online. But yeah, any questions, you feel free to call me or email me, and I'll be glad to talk to you and give you directly what you need specifically. We just don't share the slides out that we do because they are catch my breath slides, and we're not allowed to do that. Anything I create completely by myself, I share out, but we're not able to do that. I know Dan said something earlier. What did Dan say? I was a teen once. I've experienced smoking as a teen to 20s, quit that, then experienced vaping for 6 years, quit that. There are a lot of areas in a teen's life that lead to these impulsive addictions, from curiosity to trying something new. Yeah, they all try for some different reason. Usually it's just because everyone else is doing it, you know. And the youth tobacco survey, I personally feel like that's a really low estimate of how many kids are actually vaping. So when I have asked my own kids about the youth tobacco survey, they kind of laugh because they said, Mom, nobody tells the truth on that. So they said, just take that and multiply that by many more times. And that's how many people are really vaping or using those substances. I said, oh, so. Yeah, so yeah, Trina says she along with her adult children, yeah, are in a constant effort to educate the kids. And it's constant because they will constantly put up that smoke screen of it's not bad. It's really not as bad as cigarettes, and it doesn't smell, it doesn't pollute everything. It does. There's an oily substance. It even provides the same kind of secondhand issue, but it's an oilier issue because they're breathing out those chemicals and oils, and it's landing on your pets, and it's landing on your couch and your babies and everything else. And I will tell you another fact that didn't have anything to do with this, but the rate of poison control calls because of vaping materials has skyrocketed. And it went, I know one year in one of the, just last year, I was in a organizational meeting, and they said there was under 300 calls the year before, and there were over 3,500 calls the following year on the same devices because people were leaving their pods and their vapes laying around the house. And for those of you who are nature lovers, they're polluting our landfills because they're just taking those pods and those disposables and they're polluting our landfills. So I actually talked to, in Porter County, we had a Chamber of Commerce Expo the other day, and I talked to the waste management folks, and they said, yeah, there's a specific way to handle those, to recycle them, and they have recycle containers you can get for those. I would just rather get rid of the vaping and not have to recycle the pods, but yeah, it's definitely an issue too. So it affects not just our lungs, but it affects our environment, our homes, and everything else, just like cigarettes do.
Right. Are there any other questions or comments? All right, Carrie and Emily, thank you so much for your time today. Great conversation. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. Be looking for your emails on Friday with all of the information that you need. And hopefully we will see you all in November for Attitude of Gratitude conversation. Thanks so very much. Have a great day.